Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Jimmy Kimmel debacle update where I'm just going to give you some further thoughts on this scandal. I think a scandal revolving around Jimmy Kimmel, his cancellation that was done at the behest of the FCC. The FCC, just a very quick synopsis. Brendan Carr, the chair of the FCC, declared that there was going to be pressure put on license carriers and ABC, Disney for the likes of, say, Jimmy Kimmel, and implored that Jimmy Kimmel was pulled. Then Jimmy Kimmel was pulled by Nexstar and then Sinclair, local TV stations and carrier. They are networks of lots of local TV stations. Now Nexstar wants to merge with Tegna, and in order to get the green light on merging, they would need Brendan Carr's say-so. And so you could argue that the pulling of Jimmy Carr was to get on the good side of the FCC chair, Brendan Carr, so that he would allow that massive merger to take place, meaning they would be by far the single biggest local network set of carriers. And anyway, they cancelled Jimmy Kimmel on account of something that was pretty innocuous. Then Sinclair followed suit, and then ABC, Disney, actually followed suit and pulled him indefinitely, and it's looking like that is actually going to be definite. And some defenders of this are saying, well, ABC's a private company, can do what he likes, but of course, this was the local carriers, first of all, pulling the show, replacing it with Charlie Kirk tributes, and demanding Jimmy Kimmel, as Sinclair have done, donates to Turning Point USA. But doing that on the behest of Brendan Carr, who said you can do this the easy way or the hard way. And they've all taken the easy way, so that he doesn't have to do anything. That's the easy way of cancelling, or the government steps in and cancels forcibly. So some people who are defending the decision saying, well, this is a private company deciding to do that. No, these are private entities being cajoled and threatened by the FCC, by the government. So this is from the government. ABC then pull it, and the reports were that actually they didn't see Disney, ABC, they didn't see anything wrong with what Jimmy Kimmel said, but they were just afraid of the kickback from Trump. Okay, they're not after him, Jimmy Kimmel, they're after you. He's just in the way. This is how they get to controlling your thoughts. Remember, Stephen Miller has said in the past, in 2022, he's the Deputy Chief of Staff, essentially, in the White House. He is really running the White House. Says, if the idea of free speech enrages you, the cornerstone of all of democratic self-government, then I regret to inform you that you are a fascist. Good to know, says Gavin Newsom. So, if the idea of freedom of speech enrages you, you're a fascist. So Jimmy Kimmel says something freely, and that enrages the right. Therefore, they are fascists, says the government fascist. Representative Eric Smallwell then retweets Charlie Kirk's statement. Recent incidents, said Charlie Kirk when he was live with Laura Ingraham, shows exactly how intolerant the left is. They hear something they don't like, and they immediately try to destroy her career, boycott the advertisers, and push for cancellation. They want to destroy conservatives each chance they can. So Charlie Kirk said, and of course that's exactly what's happening to Jimmy Kimmel. There's just rank hypocrisy, as I've pointed out so very many times. So what do we have here? This is Ahmed Baba saying back in 2024, Trump picked Brendan Carr, the literal author of Project 2025's chapter on the FCC, to be chairman of the FCC. Can't say we didn't warn you. So the idea, this is just all part of Project 2025 Heritage Foundation's playbook. This is all fitting in with exactly what they told you would happen. Brendan Carr said, I'm sorry this happened to you, as a kind of sarcastic comeback. And then Ahmed Baba now says, just yesterday, I believe, this is how Brendan Carr responded to me in November 2024 after I called out the fact that he wrote Project 2025's chapter on the FCC. He never answered my follow-up question, which was, while I have you here, will you definitely rule out targeting the broadcast licenses of news networks Trump disagrees with? He's called on the licenses of multiple networks to be revoked. You claim to be a free speech champion, so this answer should be a no-brainer. Oh my word. So that was 2024, November 2024. Do you, Brendan Carr, definitively rule out targeting broadcast licenses of news networks that Trump disagrees with. And that's exactly what he's done. He didn't answer that question. Baba says, he never answered my follow-up question. Well, now we have our answer. As I mentioned, this is all part of the Project 2025 playbook. And there is something called the Project 2025 Tracker. And what it does is as it says here, it's a comprehensive community-driven initiative to track the implementation of Project 2025's policy proposals. Remember, that was a 900-page document that set out exactly what Trump would be doing as a blueprint to his administration. And at the moment, they have achieved 47%, as according to this organization, 47% of the implementation. They've achieved 317 total objectives involving 34 agencies, and there is still 1,220 days left of the term at the point that was generated. 47% complete, and we're barely 8 months in. Time to brush up on the details and brace for what's still to come. Oh dear, this is very, very disturbing. So you can go and see the Project 2025 tracker there, and go and find out what's going on there. Progress by the agency USAID, completely 100% achieved. They've got rid of it. I mean, there is no more. CFTC, Commodity Futures Trading Commission, one objective that's been achieved. White House, 13 objectives. That's 92% of the objectives set out in the in Project 2025. 75% of Department of State objectives, so on and so forth. You can go through every single agency and look at how much of Project 2025 has been achieved. I did tell you before the election that the Trump administration was just going to be a case of fulfilling the Project 2025 mandate. The Heritage Foundation run the White House. Brendan Carr, Stephen Miller, Russell Vought. Names and names, there's so many of them. All Tom Homan, I think, as well. Okay. Tennessee Holler here says, State TV's Sean Hannity, State TV, Fox News' Sean Hannity, hilariously claims that this isn't conservative censorship, saying none of them called for Kimmel's cancellation. Here's one from back in July, Sean. So Donald Trump, if it's not conservative censorship, that if no one has called for Kimmel's cancellation, then maybe Sean Hannity has a point. Quote from Trump, I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings. I hear Jimmy Kimmel is next, has even less talent than Colbert. Greg Gutfeld is better than all of them combined, including the moron on NBC who ruined the once great Tonight Show. Sean Hannity
just was
says,
simple. People changed the channel. The left already, starting with Humpty Dumpty, fake news, CNN, J.B. Pritzker, Gavin Newsom, predictably claiming this is conservative censorship. The MAGA crowd, Donald Trump got Jimmy Kimmel. That is false. I can't find a single prominent conservative voice in the country that even remotely wanted or hoped or was pushing to get Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air. Nobody. It just was simple.
So, as Chris Hayes says, Trump literally said Kimmel is next back in July. All of this is clearly pretextual. It's like having us believe Lisa Cook got fired because of a mortgage application. Other people can pretend to be that stupid, but you don't have to be. Sean Hannity is full of crap. So, Jordan Weissman says, so to recap recent media events, Larry Ellison's son. So Larry Ellison, was he the guy in charge of Oracle? And as a fan of Oracle, he is a top donor to Conservative Solutions PAC, a super PAC supporting Marco Rubio's 2016 presidential bill. $4 million he gave to the PAC by February 2016. He allowed President Trump to have a fundraiser at his Rancho Mirage estate. He donated $15 million to the Opportunity Matters super PAC associated with Tim Scott, who's Republican from South Carolina. Significant financial contributions to the 2022 election cycle, and so on and so forth. So you can see where he's at there politically speaking. Anyway, Larry Ellison. So his son has bought CBS and promptly began remaking its news as a conservative network. So this is where Barry Weiss was involved. This is Paramount owning. So I don't know how it works. So Paramount I thought owned CBS, merged with Skydance, cancelled Colbert, and then paid Trump 15 million and then a further 35 million in public service announcements. We learned that Ellison and Trump donors at the AZ-16 would get to buy US TikTok. So there's this, the TikTok has had a stay of execution, but it looks like that might be going to conservatives as well. So ABC suspended Jimmy Kimmel after a mere threat by the FCC. Sure feels like American Orbanism. Also, Ellison is going after Warner Brothers now, by all accounts. So, oh my goodness. So as Melanie Dirigo here says, Trump's allies now control X, so Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and TikTok. So that's all the meta world. Zuckerberg has been cozying up to Trump, saying he's going, he was at that dinner with him the other night saying stuff that supports Trump in terms of investment of $600 billion, pulled it out of his arse and then was caught hot mic saying that. TikTok now looks to be going that way. They own Fox News, CBS, Washington Post, that's Jeff Bezos, Wall Street Journal, that's Murdoch, New York Post, that's Murdoch. They own Sinclair Broadcasting, which has 200 TV stations and local news in 100 markets. I think they're supposed to have like 40% of the local TV market, which is, I think, over the 38% they're allowed to have. Anyway, freedom of speech is now what Trump and billionaire pals say it is, which is why the World Press Freedom Index ranking of the US is dropping precipitously. And it is, not looking good there. 57th now, 2013 to 2025 rank out of 180 countries. Press freedom in the US is a 57th. So if you think they are upholding democratic and free speech ideals, think again. And then we had the other day Brian Kilmeade declaring that they should euthanize homeless people who didn't accept treatment, forcibly euthanize them with a lethal injection involuntarily. So, in other words, he was advocating murder on TV. There was such a pushback that happened over the weekend. He came out on Monday and apologized for that. And now what's he saying about Jimmy Kimmel, who said something really innocuous and has been cancelled?
More on that later. The point is that Kimmel's comments went way too far for some television executives. Not for me, not for you, but for them. Okay. And they turned up the heat on Kimmel, the host, to calm down the rhetoric.
So this is really interesting because he understands that if he had said went way too far, full stop, then he would be absolutely done for double standards, which points out that those who are calling for the cancelling of Jimmy Kimmel, saying he did go too far, that they are exhibiting double standards. So Kilmeade's own statement here is an admission that the right is going too far with Jimmy Kimmel. And we know that he obviously has to say that because he wasn't sacked for advocating the murder of homeless people. I mean, anyway, we won't go down that whole double standards thing again, but my goodness. Now, apparently, at least according to Brian Allen, this is footage that is showing that Jimmy Kimmel's studio is reportedly being cleared out. Furniture, equipment, everything being hauled away. No formal announcement, no send-off, just silence and moving trucks. I don't know if that is the case, but yeah, I don't know what's going to go on there. I mean, it would be amazing if they have fully cancelled the show after such an innocuous comment. And if that has genuinely happened, then it's worse than we think. Then actually freedom of speech has gone in the United States and it is sliding inexorably towards autocracy in a really, really disturbing way. I'd suggest it is anyway, no matter whether they fully get rid of Jimmy Kimmel or not. But goodness me, if they have done, it's bad. Now, Joe Rogan, who has had 15 years of podcasting, biggest podcast in the world, often talking about how you shouldn't censor comedy and freedom of speech and excoriating the left for all this. He doesn't seem to be saying anything at the moment. As Jason Hartley says, Joe Rogan did like 15 years of podcasting about the problems of censoring jokes and opened his own club in Austin to allow it all, a free speech comedy club. Right. If Joe doesn't speak up here, he never really cared about free speech. It was all just a way to grift. It is super, super sad, the whole thing. Just a bit of a summary here from Brian Stelter.
Off the air indefinitely. This follows a controversy over comments
Jake Tapper,
the late night comedian, made Monday night about Charlie Kirk's suspected killer and the MAGA movement and their reaction to the assassination. Let's get straight to CNN's chief media affairs correspondent, Brian Stelter. Brian, what is going on?
That's right. This is fast developing this afternoon, Jake, amid pressure from the Trump-aligned FCC. And in the past few minutes, ABC confirmed to CNN that Kimmel's show will be off the air, quote, indefinitely. We have not yet heard from Kimmel or his representatives. That's how quickly this has been developing. But let's back up and look at what Kimmel actually said.
So on and so forth. But the idea that CNN openly saying that was under pressure from CNN. Now, I did this in my live stream yesterday, but I will repeat these. Here is an excerpt from the Montreal Star newspaper on February the 4th, 1939. Title, Herr Goebbels angered by anti-Nazi wit. So, anti-Nazi comedy. Anti-Trump comedy or anti-MAGA comedy. You can see this as comedians banned for humorous remarks on leaders. Berlin, February the 4th. When propaganda minister Paul Joseph Goebbels yesterday blasted Germany's cafe society, he called it, quote, society rabble and intellectual snobs for laughing at comedians who make Nazi leaders the butts of their jokes. Goebbels turned his anger upon the society rabble after announcing that 5 German actors have been banned from the stage for publicly ridiculing Nazi party and state functionaries. He denied there was any lack of humour in the Nazi party, but said that it must be kept good-natured, decent and clean. Quote, there's plenty of humour in Germany, more than enough, he said in a 3 1/2 column editorial in the Nazi party's newspaper, Völkischer Beobachter. But we do not permit ourselves to be ridiculed. And yes, so 5 actors were cancelled. The 5 were said to have been warned repeatedly to stop making jokes about the Nazis. You can't make jokes about the Nazis or we will cancel you. That's what happened in Germany in 1939. I wonder what happened after that. And then we hear that Trump is now trying to cancel and make illegal Antifa as an organisation, which is kind of weird. It's fairly nebulous. Not really sure it is. It's a coherent single thing. Antifa standing for anti-fascists. So Antifa people are people who protest against fascism. Now, what happened again in 1930s Germany? Adolf Hitler had Antifa arrested. He had members of the original Antifasciste Aktion, anti-fascist action, arrested as one of the very first actions he made after taking power in 1933. It was the beginning of the Nazi regime. And now we hear that comedians have been banned or cancelled in the US and Antifa have been outlawed. I don't know. I'm just saying these things. You can join the dots if you like. Brendan Carr, though, is getting warned. Get a lawyer, says Representative Eric Swalwell, and save your documents. In a Dem majority, your ass is going to be in a witness chair for a long time. It's all coming out. All of your corrupt deals. And there are many deals that are getting given the green light that look rather dubious. Thank you to Sinclair, said Brendan Carr yesterday, for taking quick action that you consider responsive to the needs and values of the communities you serve. Of course, he pretty much demanded that very strongly suggested that they should do this thing. Then they did this thing. Then he congratulated them for doing that. And they're in Brendan Carr's good books. So this, I would say, is all a result of government pressure, Trump's pressure. And he talked about Jimmy Kimmel getting cancelled previously. Then Brendan Carr warned about Jimmy Kimmel, warned ABC, warned Disney, and warned the license carriers. Then Jimmy Kimmel was cancelled. Then Brendan Carr congratulated the people that cancelled him. And when Brian Stelter from CNN asked for a comment from Brendan Carr, asked a question, he then sent back a GIF from the office of people celebrating. In other words, he's completely celebrating what had happened. This has all come from him. And it's just the whole pattern of what's going on. You remember Letitia James, the Attorney General from New York, who has found Trump guilty, liable, etc. Well, Letitia James has become persona non grata for the Republicans, and Trump demanded that she was found guilty for whatever, mortgage fraud. So President Trump asked the Virginia, I think, Eastern District of Virginia attorney to go after Letitia James and find evidence of mortgage fraud so she could be taken down. Turns out that no evidence has been forthcoming. Surprise, surprise. This is using lawfare to silence critics and to silence people who are holding you to account legally. Now, President Donald Trump is expected to fire that US attorney for being unable to find incriminating evidence of mortgage fraud against Letitia James. It's all about shoot the messenger. I want you to go and find dirt on this person. I want you, person X, to find dirt on person Y. Person X comes back and says, I can find no evidence. There is no evidence of person Y doing wrong. Right, you are fired. You are going down. I'm taking you down. Yeah, but there's no... It's not my fault that there's no evidence. It's your fault for having a false accusation. No, you are going down for that. Screw you. They're going to fire a US attorney because they can't find evidence of a crime that was manufactured by the administration. This is Banana Republic BS, says angry staffer. Molly Ploufkins here says, well, actually, no, we'll listen to this because this is worth listening to.
Mr. President, you said earlier this week that the women who yelled at you, who were protesting when you were at Joe's Stone Crab, should be in jail. Do you actually think that that is an offense that deserves jail time?
I don't know how they got in there, but certainly I thought it was very inappropriate. And they said things that were and it was a question of when you take a look at the way they acted, the way they behaved. Yeah, I think they were a threat.
And you think that deserves jail?
Do you agree with it?
I think they're a nasty organization.
But you think they deserve jail?
Well, I don't know. What's your congressman?
Mr. President.
So this is now looking like anyone that wants to essentially criticize Trump is in the firing line for going to prison. That if you say something about Trump in public, in a restaurant, for example, rather than just getting thrown out of the restaurant and told never to come back, the restaurant taking a stance from their own private point of view, you've disrupted here, you're not coming back. It's like, no, you're actually going to prison. Yeah, I think they were a threat. Now, he didn't explicitly say they were should go to prison. He was asked about that. He didn't answer. He evaded answering in that way, but you can imagine that that's exactly what he's wanting. You have a situation where any kind of criticism of the president is being seen as a stick with which to beat the public with, that you can end up being put in prison or being cancelled for mere criticism. And if you didn't think that was bad, this is the latest. So listen to Trump in his own words. This is a hot mic incident.
Look, that's something that should be talked about for licensing too. When you have a network and you have evening shows and all they do is hit Trump, that's all they do. If you go back, I guess they haven't had a conservative on in years or something, somebody said. But when you go back and you take a look, all they do is hit Trump. They're licensed. They're not allowed to do that. They're an arm of the Democrat Party. Thank you, everybody.
They're licensed. They're not allowed to do that. They're an arm of the Democrat Party. Without understanding that Fox do that and have been doing that for decades on behalf of the Republican Party. They are, as some people say, state television for the Republican Party. For this present government, Fox is state television, but he allows that licensing, the licensing of Fox to continue. But comedians who criticize Trump, they're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to do that. All they do is criticize me. They're not allowed to do that. They're licensed. They shouldn't be licensed. Please understand how concerning this is. It's insanely concerning. Then we're going to go to just another form of cancellation, censorship, and this is slightly more extreme, slightly more racist, or you could argue anti-Islamic. I don't know how much is to do with the colour of Ilhan Omar's skin, and how much is to do with her just being a foreigner, and how much is it to do with her being Muslim, because being a Muslim and being anti-Islam isn't racism. I'm not a fan of Islam. I have given talks at universities on how Islam is textually a violent religion. Now, I stopped giving that talk because I think it's quite divisive. What you want to do is celebrate liberal Muslims as a way of getting people to, I'm an atheist, right? So all religions, I think, are factually incorrect, but also many forms of religion, fundamentalist religions, are deeply, deeply problematic from a moral point of view. And even though I'm a liberal, I will criticize Islam as much as I do Christianity. Now, some liberals see Islam as a protected area because it's oppressed, because there are fewer Muslims. It's okay to be critical of, and I remember when I was writing articles on this at the time years ago, and I was writing on a network where one of my fellow, the guy that actually ran the network at that time, and this is one of the first networks I wrote for, was like, I'm really uncomfortable with you, writing this stuff against Islam. And I was like, hang on, we're like an atheist network, and you're fine going to town on Christianity, but why not Islam? And all I'm doing is doing a textual analysis, but like a Quranic exegesis, in the same way I've done biblical exegeses before on Christian positions and called them out for moral issue there. And now I'm doing it to Islam. You don't like that, but you didn't have a problem with me. In fact, you've done it yourself with Christianity. So there is, I think, a natural desire for some liberals to push back on criticisms of Islam, because it does get mixed up with xenophobia and racism, and we can see that in the UK with the latest, that Unite the Kingdom march in the UK, where it was embroiled with immigration. Then there was a lot of anti-Islamic rhetoric. So I am not a fan of Islam, but I wouldn't call it Islamophobia, because I'd say it's rational and it's from an exegetical point of view. But the way I speak to and about Muslims is different to how I theocratically analyze the core texts. And that's a big difference. But what I was afraid was that my work would get used to actually stoke social division and Islamophobia, which is kind of more an irrational response. And I didn't want to throw petrol on the fire there. But I'm not a fan of any organized religion, right? So when I criticize Islam, it's in a larger context. Whereas when other people can criticize Islam, it's like, well, my religion's okay, but I'm going to go to town on yours. It's like, actually, no, both of your religions are wrong or suck or whatever. And what's going on right now with Ilhan Omar, who is a Somalian, I think her family came to the US, was she a Minnesota lawmaker before becoming an actual representative. Now, Ilhan Omar, because she's Somalian and a Muslim and wears a headscarf, she is massively targeted by people, go back to your own country, all that kind of stuff that's happened. She's a US citizen, and she has every right to be the representative she is, etc., etc. But she's now embroiled in a massive fight with Nancy Mace. Now, You Belong in Rehab, Not Congress, said Ilhan Omar back to Nancy Mace, who's been going nuts at her. So the internet is feral, says BuzzFeed, over the feud between Nancy Mace and Ilhan Omar because of her reposts about Charlie Kirk. And it's actually really, really ugly, to the point where Donald Trump, and so this, why I'm talking about this in the context of the rest of what I've said, is because this is about closing down opposition, and this is another form of it. So Donald Trump has said Ilhan Omar's country of Somalia is plagued by a lack of central government control, persistent poverty, hunger, resurgent terrorism, piracy, decades of civil war, corruption, and pervasive violence. Of course, Donald Trump would never be able to write something like that, but nonetheless, 70% of the population lives in extreme poverty and widespread food insecurity. Somalia is consistently ranked among the world's most corrupt countries, including bribery, embezzlement, and a dysfunctional government. All of this, and Ilhan Omar tells us how to run America. Well, she's a US citizen, that's where she lives, and it's where she's lived for much longer than living, I presume, for longer than she was living in Somalia. P.S. Wasn't she the one that married her brother in order to gain citizenship? What scum we have in our country telling us what to do and how to do it. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. Now, this is a conservative conspiracy theory that came out in 2016 about her supposedly marrying her brother. Journalists and fact-checkers from across the political spectrum have investigated the claim. They have consistently found no credible evidence to support the conspiracy theory. In 2019, the Associated Press conducted a thorough investigation interviewing members of the Somali community who knew Ilhan Omar and her family. They found no evidence that Elmi was related to her. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune also launched its own investigation interviewing family members who confirmed that Ilhan's brother, who is not Elmi, lives in the United States and is not a US citizen. And Snopes, a non-partisan fact-checking website, also debunked the claim, labelling it as false. Investigators concluded that the man Ilhan Omar married was not her brother. Her brother has also publicly denied the allegations and has distanced himself from the political turmoil. So this is Donald Trump just regurgitating an outright falsehood concerning Ilhan Omar. And that is really, I think, dangerous. But anyway, yeah, Mehdi Hassan, who is a US citizen now of British origin, says Ilhan Omar's country of Somalia is an inherently racist statement. Her country is the United States. Omar is a US citizen. In any normal country with a functioning opposition and decent media, this would be a huge controversy for the governing party and the president. But the stuff like this just goes by the wayside. Trump says ridiculous and offensive things all the time. And it gets to this point. So just go and find, well, if you don't actually do this, but Nancy Mace's Twitter feed is, I think she's done 75 posts on Ilhan Omar. So she absolutely hates her. And this spat is really, really offensive. Nancy Mace saying, expel, denaturalize, deport in that order, speaking to what Trump says here.
I think she should be impeached. I think she's terrible. Is she originally from Somalia? Yes, sir. So,
is she originally from Somalia? Hang on. You've just written a massive True Social post saying all this stuff, clearly knowing everything about her, and then now you're asking the press for confirmation. Is she from Somalia?
How are they doing this? How's their government? Do they have a president?
How are they doing? Do they have a president? You've just written us a massive screed on how terrible it is. Why are you asking us? If you already know that, right?
Council? Do they have anything? Do they have police? I love these people that come from a place with nothing, no anything, and then they tell us how to run our country. No, I think if she got censored,
she's been elected to a political position. Her job is to tell you or change the way in which the country is run. To tell you how badly you're doing with running the country because she's in the opposition, or to put laws in place in order that the country runs well. It's literally her job as a US citizen, elected into a role by her electorate. What you are saying is deeply problematic.
If she got censored, that's great. If she got impeached, that's even better.
So Nancy Mace is calling for her to be censured.
They impeached me twice for nothing. And they impeached me knowing the Republicans are on my side.
International blackmail?
But they impeached me twice. She should be impeached, and it should happen fast.
Why? Why should she be impeached? What is the reason? Anyway, when you look at Nancy Mace, she's just going to town on this. We'll do whatever it takes to send her back, Mr. President, she says. America first, not Somalia first. So on and so forth. I mean, she's just being really offensive about Ilhan Omar. President Trump calls for Representative Ilhan Omar to be removed from Congress. Nancy Mace says, we voted for this, rather than saying actually her electorate voted for her, which is probably what she should say, and so on and so forth. It just, yeah. But this is about taking down people who aren't like you. And that includes generally your opposition, silencing your opposition, censoring opposition politicians, silencing and cancelling critics and comedians, taking different media outlets to court, ABC and Disney, CBS and Paramount, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal. This is Associated Press, This is all part of the same quest for power, more power. It is insanely worrying. As Mehdi Hassan says, so Nancy Mace has then come out and said Ilhan Omar is an enemy of the state. And we've heard Republicans in the last few days say people need to stop calling, and they've said this for some time, the left need to stop calling us Nazis and fascists and enemies of the state and dehumanizing us and blah, blah, blah. And then Jon Stewart just did a brilliant piece on this where, you had Republicans calling for the left to stop doing these things, and then a montage of Trump doing exactly those things, calling the left Nazis, calling the left fascists, dehumanizing the left, and calling the left enemies of the state. It's like, and here you've got Nancy Mace calling Ilhan Omar an enemy of the state. Mehdi Hassan says, look, if anything, God forbid, happens to Ilhan Omar, per the GOP logic of the last few days, the blood will be on Nancy Mace's hands. Just pure relentless incitement here. She knows what she is doing. Multiple men are already in prison for trying to kill Omar. She is, I think, one of the most targeted politicians in the country, and this is just adding to it. This is deeply, deeply irresponsible at a time when people supposedly should be calling for a reduction in political violence. It's deeply, deeply troubling. So anyway, that's a little synopsis of what's going on. I've just uploaded yesterday a debate I had with former presidential candidate David French. He now writes for Dispatch. He's an evangelical Christian, but he's a conservative, and he was cancelled by his church recently. And there was all sorts of controversy about that, which is hilarious because back in 2025, he was arguing that the left cancel and the right don't cancel. And I was arguing, no, this is just a complete skewing of the reality of what goes on. And I've literally lost 2 jobs for being cancelled for being a left-wing liberal and atheist. I've literally lost 2 jobs. I can't speak about one of them because I'm technically under a confidentiality agreement. But I've been cancelled, financially cancelled. I've lost 2 jobs for being a left-wing liberal, and so it really annoys me when everyone's like, "Oh, the left love to cancel," and you're like, do you know what blasphemy laws are? That's literally a form of cancel. And do you know who upholds blasphemy laws? Religious fundamentalists. Do you know where they sit on the political spectrum? They don't sit on the left, really. They're not lovey-dovey social justice warriors and socialists. Anyway, just thought I'd throw that one. So I had this debate with David French, and David French is a lovely, lovely guy, really decent guy. But I'd love to talk to him now about cancel culture if he's now been cancelled from his church. Because he was arguing, of course, that this was much more of a left-wing thing. This was at the time when J.K. Rowling was talking about trans issues and whatnot. And this was on Premier Christian Radio, so there is a religious element to it. I'm there as an atheist, pushing back on David French's claims as a religious person. Justin Briley in the top left is the compare, but he's deeply religious himself. But he does a fairly good job. He doesn't do Unbelievable anymore. He did a fairly good job of mediating. I was on there a couple of times, maybe 3 times, certainly twice. They asked me to go on again, but I was like, my brain doesn't work as well as it used to, so yeah, I'd rather not. So yeah, that's a 2020 debate. You can go and watch it. I uploaded it from my other channel, my philosophical channel, to this channel last night, so it's in the recent videos. Check it out, see what you think, see if I did okay. I can't really remember how I did. I seem to remember doing all right in that as a debate. But yeah, this is super worrying. Like the political climate in the US is looking like 1930s Germany more and more with each passing day, and the noose is tightening on all sorts of different entities, whether they are politicians, whether they are newspapers, whether they are comedians. It is quite frankly a 5-alarm moment. Those alarms are going off. The fire is burning. The Reichstag is alight. And what is going to happen next? Because although it seems pretty evident that, according to the polls, even with gerrymandering giving the Republicans a bunch of seats, the Democrats are on for having a really significant win in the midterms, certainly in the House of Representatives, and that means that they can put loads of impeachments and investigations in place. But many of you in the comments are saying we're not going to have the midterms. Elections are off. You are seeing just this chipping away at the democratic mechanisms and ideals of the US and the denigration really of the Constitution, to the point where you can predict possibly that the midterms might not take place. So the Republicans might continue to have control of the Senate because there might be some kind of national emergency where you don't get the midterms. It could well happen. So be alert. Do I want to say awake? Do I want to say woke? No, probably not. It's probably a bit divisive. Just be alert. Do not fall asleep. Now, when I said don't fall asleep, it just reminded me, because I live in this weird internet place, of bad lip reading and their Star Wars songs. This one, Seagulls, Stop It Now, chef's kiss. This is just, honestly, go and have yourselves a good few minutes of listening to this bad lip reading that, in this case, they take Star Wars films and look at what they might be saying through lip reading and then just interpret it really weirdly and make songs out of the Star Wars ones. They're just very funny, very cool. So don't fall asleep, guys. I'll leave that warning to Yoda.
Yeah, whatever. You're sort of pitchy.
Didn't like it?
Listen, man, I'm not your friend.
Don't fall asleep. Don't fall asleep.
Anyway, that's bad lip reading. Go and have some fun. But remember, don't fall asleep.